Bibles, turn with me. Verse 22. Then he said to his disciples, "Therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you put on it. Life is more than food, and the body more than clothing. Consider the ravens, for they neither sow nor reap, and yet which have neither storehouse nor barn, and God feeds them. How much more value are you than the birds? And which of you, by worrying, can add 1 cubit to his stature? If you then are not able to do the least, why are you anxious for the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow, and they neither toil nor spin. Yet I say to you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. If then God so clothes the grass, which today is in the field and tomorrow is thrown in the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? Do not seek what you shall eat or what you should drink, nor have an anxious mind. For all these things the nations of the world seek after, and your Father knows that you need these things. But seek the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you. Do not fear, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell what you have and give alms. Provide yourself money bags which do not grow old, a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches nor moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." In one of the hymns that the church has sung for quite some time, song is "Why Worry When You Can Pray." Why worry when you can pray? Trust Jesus, he'll be your stay. Don't be a doubting Thomas. Rest fully on his promise. Why worry, 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 worry when you can pray? I'm going to ask Brother Gary to lead us in prayer before we get into the study of God's Word this morning.
Lord, we thank you for today. Lord, we just trust that you open our ears. The Scripture says, for those who have ears, let them hear. Those who have eyes, see. Very simple concept. We just pray that we'll be able to adhere to the words that have been spoken today, fully understand them, and put them to good use. If we don't put them to good use, we're just wasting our time. We just pray your blessing on the word today. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
In this 12th chapter, we've had 4 other scenarios where God has challenged the thinking and the works of the people of Israel. They had a philosophy concerning life and how they ought to conduct their lives, and so it was very much according to the law of the Old Testament, that by doing these things, they were somehow earning or deserving of God's good pleasure and praise. But in each of these scenarios, God has condemned the leadership for what they were doing in the past and challenged them to change and do something different in the future. For instance, in Luke chapter 12, it says, "In the meantime, when an innumerable multitude of people had gathered together so that they trampled one another, he began to say to the disciples, first of all, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. For there is nothing covered that will not be revealed, nor hidden that will not be made known. Therefore, whatever you have spoken in the dark will be heard in the light, and what you have spoken in the ear, in the inner room, will be proclaimed from the housetops. The Pharisees had this trapping of righteousness, this adornment of good things, the whitewashed sepulchres that they were putting on a show for men on the outer man, but inside their heart was altogether turned away from God. And so we come to this next passage of Scripture, Luke chapter 12, verse 13. Now there's a certain circumstance. Remember in that first passage, Luke made a real effort, a point of emphasizing how many people were here to see Jesus. There is a multitude, an innumerable number of people, huge congregation. And so much so, as they pressed to get to Jesus to hear, they trampled one another underfoot to get that much closer to the Lord. And out of the midst of such a number, there comes a voice. It says in verse 13, one of the crowd said to him. Now, there's the crowd, there's the multitude, and then there's the 12. Two different. One fellow has made quite a bit of money from a book in which he uses this kind of picture. There's the teacher, the 12 make up a core, and then there's the familiar, the 70, remember the 70? And then there's the multitude and the body, and expands from there. And the farther out and the more there are, the farther away from the intimacy that is with Christ. So the 12 are the closest to the Lord. They're familiar with Him. They're close to Him. They've studied Him with Him. And if you were in a class and you conduct your class, I like to ask questions. I do some talking, and then I'll stop and I'll ask a question, see how they're hearing. And so, if somebody has a question over something you've said, and they just didn't get it, they missed it. Have you ever seen somebody raise their hand and wait to be called on? I got a question, here, ask me. And so, here's this multitude of people pressing in around Jesus, and this fellow doesn't even bother raising his hand. Call me, call me. He just simply raises his voice and yells over the herd and tries to get Jesus' attention in the midst of this class session. Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Now, I was always told, you don't have to air everything you hear or see here at home. There's some things that we'll take care of here at home. You don't have to hang your dirty laundry out for everybody to see. You ever heard that? Don't hang your dirty laundry out for everybody to see. Here's this fellow raises his dirty laundry not on the clothesline, up the flagpole. This is my dirty laundry. Me and my brother aren't getting along. In fact, we're having a feud. Me and my brother are fighting one another for the inheritance. Notice how Jesus responds to the invitation to get involved in a family feud. He said to the man, "Man, who made me judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to him, "Take heed and beware of covetousness." Remember, he spoke to the Pharisees, beware of the what? Hypocrisy. Now he identifies covetousness. Paul said at one point, "I would have been perfect to the law had it not been for covetousness," the longing for something. And so here it is. Take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses. The man thought that this is exactly what my problem is. I don't have enough possessions. Tell my brother to divide more to me. What is it? He saw something his brother had and he wanted it. Covetousness is a sin that is unquenchable, unsatisfied. If Jesus had took or brought the two men together and sat down with them and calculated all of the land that they owed, all the debts they owed, and all the profit they expected, and cut it right down the middle, even Stephen on both sides, neither of them would have been happy. Could not have satisfied either one, no matter how you cut the pie. And Jesus knew this was a losing battle. I don't even want to get in the middle of this. It's too contentious. And neither of them are going to be happy no matter what the decision. And so the issue of covetousness is a sin that is in the heart of this man. Just over a little bit, Luke chapter 11, verse 29. Again, there was a crowd, and again they were thickly gathered together. And it says in Luke chapter 11, verse 29, while the crowds were thickly gathered together, he began to say, "This is a," what kind of generation? Evil generation. Jesus knew what was in the heart of every man. What sin was in the life of every individual. He had no need for anyone to bring their confession before him. He knew what was in the heart. All of it. Nothing hidden. Nothing concealed. Nothing whitewashed. Nothing buried or away. It seeks a sign, and no sign will be given except the sign of Jonah the prophet. Same kind of thought is introduced in Matthew chapter 12, verse 39. You can just write that one down. Matthew 12, 39. And again, he talks about what kind of generation? Evil, adulterous. And we think of sin in these kinds of terms. An evil generation is a generation that is idolatrous. Evil generation is a wicked generation. Abusing children and abusing wives and disturbing the peace and conflict and bullying and all of the things that we could identify that would make that term evil or wicked to stand up and stand out. This generation, this whole generation, how many of you have heard of how many different generations? We are the baby boomer generation. Is the baby boomer generation an evil generation? Unfortunately, yes. It's what's in the heart of man. All of us have the same nature, sin nature. We have to contend with that. Now they're talking about Generation X and what's another one?
Z.
Z, already to Z? X, Y, Z. There was another one that was millennials, the millennial generation. And each and every one of these groupings, this classification by age, it still boils down to another class of evil people, wicked in the heart, through and through. And so here, Jesus looks at the heart of this fellow who asked the question. Teacher, have my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Remember in that day they had the brothers, there was the firstborn, and then there were other brothers and sisters in each stage. But this younger brother wants more from the elder brother, and he's not giving an inch. He said this much and no more. And so he says, but who made me the arbiter? Who made me the decision maker? And yet in most synagogues, this is what the practice was. You came to the synagogue, you came to the rabbi, you came in, and everyone from the community and from the family would sit down with the rabbi, the teacher, and he would go through and make the final decision. Whatever the decision of the rabbi, everybody was supposed to be content and say thank you and go away happy. And Jesus says, this isn't going to happen. There's no way. And so he gives a parable. By the way, there is Matthew chapter 13. Just fly back there to Matthew chapter 13 just for a second, because we're going to be looking at parables, and the disciples had a real issue with Jesus over parables. In my Bible, there's little section headings: parable of the sower and the seed, and then the purpose of parables, verse 10. Matthew chapter 13, verse 10. Jesus is going to answer the question, why with parables? And the disciples came and said to him, why do you speak to them in parables? And he answered and he said to them, because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. But to them it has not been given, for whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Therefore I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. I think Gary made some mention of that idea in his prayer this morning. Giving ears that need to hear, and eyes that need to see. And in fact, when God sent Isaiah to the nation of Israel as prophet, he said, you're going to a generation, to a people who have eyes, but they can't see. And they have ears, and they can't hear, because they've seen so much of the grace of God, of the glory of God, of the power of God. They've seen it, evidence before them in their lives, and they just can't take in any more. Kelly came in this morning, and each of you came in out of the bright sunlight. You've had so much sunlight, so much, and then you come into the dark. What happened? You can't see a thing. Your eyes are almost burning from having so much light. Think of that. If the sun has that effect on our eyes, what would it be to stand in the presence of the glory of God?
our eyes can't take it. Our nature can't take it. But one day, when Christ comes, we're going to have a new and glorified body like his. And we'll be able to stand in the presence of the God of grace and glory. And what a day, glorious day that will be. Until then, we have to contend with these poor little eyes. But parables were given because there is a mystery out there, a secret that's been kept, the kingdom of heaven. What is it? What's it like? And so Jesus uses stories, parables, like the sower and the seed, and the torn garment, and the talents. When I was a kid, parables were a pain. I just really couldn't understand parables. I have a friend who all he wants to see and hear are the parables. Tell me another parable. I love them. I'm like, really? The parables? Give me one of the epistles, the writings of Paul. I can get in and study and meet that out. But the parables of Jesus and the Gospels, those things are nuts. But here there is another parable. And so we're going to look at this one. Luke chapter 12, verse 16. Because the fellow came and asked Jesus to have the property divided so he could get his share, his part of the pie, verse 16, Jesus says, he spoke to them a parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do, since I do not have room to store my crops? And so he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build greater. And there I will store all my crops and all my goods. And I will say to my soul, when you say soul, what are you talking? Yourself, your life, your person. They talk about so many souls on an aircraft carrier that went down. They talk about so many souls on a boat that went down in the sea. And so life, individual lives, personal people. And so it says, I say to my soul, soul, self, you have many goods laid up for many years. We've done well for ourselves. Take your goods, take your ease, relax, chill. It's going to be all right. Relax, take it easy. Eat, drink, be merry. You know, I used to think that was a one-time. That is repeated over and over all through the Old Testament and New Testament. Same line. Our attitude toward life. Eat, drink, be merry. For tomorrow, what? God said to him, fool, you idiot. This night, your soul will be required of you. You're going to give up your life. That thing that you have. Notice the personal pronouns. A certain rich man had a ground that yielded plentifully. So he thought within himself, what shall I do, since and he said, I will do this, and I will pull down this, and I will build this, and I will make this. Over and over again. It's my land, it's my crops, it's mine. The barns are mine, the land is mine. My life is in my hands. I'm the captain of my little bark. God said, you idiot. This night, your soul will be required of you. And then whose will these things be which you have provided? So is he who lays up treasure for himself and not rich toward God. There are some big farms out there. We used to have to go up 119 all the way up to Du Bois, Treasure Lake. You go up 119 or up around Poxitawney up in there, there's some huge farms, lots of acreage, and so much that they have not just one barn. They've got one barn for tractors, and one barn for this, and one barn for that. They've got a dairy barn, they've got a cow barn, they've got hogs and sheep, they've got corn and grain, they've got cotton and flax. And each of these buildings have to be erected on the property to store what the man is doing in his business, the farming agriculture business. And this particular farmer had made a lot of money in agriculture. And he thought he was so very clever, so wise, so well off, that he took all the praise and all the glory for what he had and did not recognize the hand of God that provided for all those things. Who made the ground to grow? Who makes life? In all these things, God is creator. God is sovereign. And as we're going to go down into the next passage, if we take the credit for all the things that we have, the blessings that are ours, if they're not from God, if we're the beneficiary, we make our own path, our own life, fleece it up, make our nest nice and comfortable. If God is not involved, has no part, then we really should be worried. Worried all the time. Somebody last night broke into a house down on, I think it was Morris Township. Saw it on the news this morning. Went into the fellow's house or property, took all the gold and silver. Now, if gold and silver weren't so expensive and valuable, people wouldn't store it up and nobody's going to risk going in and taking it. But they think they can benefit by having more gold and silver in their hands and in their possession, and they take good care of it. They find some way to secure it. They find vaults and safes to hide it. Every once in a while they go in and take a picture just to enjoy it. And this fella has made a life for himself, but he has not set God in the place of highest. Everything is a priority in his life. He takes good care of his property. He takes good care of his barns. He takes good care of his crops. He takes good care of himself. But that's where the borderline. Doesn't worry about his neighbor. Doesn't care about the community. Doesn't worry about somebody else's needs and where they are. How can I help them? As a servant of God, as an ambassador of God, as a minister of God, God has blessed me with so much. How can I help a brother who doesn't have that much of this world's goods? No, he kept it all, locked it up to himself. And now that he is about to go into a Christless eternity, and we're going to go before the judgment seat of God, and nothing on the ledger that says God is pleased. God hasn't taken very much notice of this fellow because the fellow never took much notice of God. They are enemies. They are opponents. They are separated by sin. The man's sin. Sin is separated between you and your God. Your sin has separated between you and your God. And the only thing that can reconcile us back is that Christ would go to the cross and pay for our sin, take our iniquities, draw it to himself, and forgive us the debt. He paid the debt. Notice what it says here in verse 22. Jesus said to his disciples, now it seems like they're leaving the company of the multitude. It seems like that herd of people are, wow, those are heavy things. I don't know how to take all that. Jesus says to his disciples, listen, therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, nor about the body, what you will put on. Life is more than food, and the body is more than clothing. Two things. And this man's soul was all about the food I eat and the clothes I wear. Now he had good crops, so he could put good food on his plate and his family. All that came to his house, all who ate at his table, had the finest. The fatted calf, clean. The lamb without spot and blemish, clean. The crops, the first gathering, blessed, gave it back to God. And notice what he says. Jesus says to his disciples, do not worry and fret. The Greek word for worry and fret is Mary Menao. And it signifies being torn up inside. Have you ever been so worried, so upset, you felt like you were just being torn apart inside over, what do I do, what do I do, what do I do? Can't make a decision, can't find peace, can't rectify. Our minds are so clouded with, I could do this, but that, the effects, what's going to happen? To be so worried that we feel like we're torn up inside. The other idea is that on a restless sea, you have the waves billowing and chopping. And on the restless sea, suspended, caught in the grip of the waves, is a boat. And the boat that's caught in the grips of the restless sea, pitched, violently thrown. Imagine being inside the boat. I don't think I've ever been real seasick. I haven't been on a sea yet, so. What little boating I've done has been small stuff. And so they say that some folks, once they get in on that boat and it starts bobbing back and forth, they get sick. I hope not. I want to enjoy my ride on one of those big boats and go fishing out there in the sea. But one day, Tim's on a submarine, and he says that even when that goes down under, there's a little bit of pitching back and forth, especially when there's a storm. But it always rights itself. It goes so far, and then it'll correct itself. So there's that. Life is more than food, the things we eat. Because what happens to food? It goes in, it nourishes the body, it does its thing, and then it's expelled. The clothes that we wear a garment for so long. We go and to the store. One of these days I'm going to go to Suit Warehouse, get one of those. Put some money down on a suit. But we've gotten them off the rack, so we're not throwing cash out the window. But those Italian silk suits, they say they're the best. Comfy, and they measure your and cut it right to shape and size. Make you look good. And then that thing gets old. You wear it 3 or 4 times. You eat a meal in it. And you wear the meal home. And now it's all stained and soiled and your body, your life, the food you eat, the clothes you wear, it's temporal. It's so temporal. Consider the ravens. Now we've got the Blue Jays, and we've got the Cardinals, we've got the Sparrows. Now the blackbirds are fighting. And the blackbirds and the grackles. Oh, I hate grackles. The stupid grackle does the same thing every year. He finds this little hole that was cut as an air vent for the dryer, and he goes in there, and he gets caught in the flashing, and then he can't get out. And he's banging his head. And so I have to peel and he right past me, knocked me off the ladder trying to get up. Yeah, life at the Sanders house. Consider the ravens. Worst, they're unclean. They don't do anything. They're ugly. They eat the meat that's roadkill. And they neither sow or reap. They don't build barns. And still God feeds the ravens. Make sure that they have enough to eat. Of how much more value are you than the birds? Consider, if God is concerned about such a small, insignificant, odd thing like birds, and you are His handiwork, His creation, created in His image for fellowship, for union, for love, and given His Son, our Savior, to us for our sin. If God is so concerned about man, how much more precious is man to God than the ravens? Which of you, by worrying, could add a cubit to your stature? If you thought that by being 6 inches taller, you'd be that much more handsome, or if you were 6 inches taller, you'd be closer to the basketball, you could make a lot more money. If I was just 6 inches taller, I could be a basketball star and wealthy. How much time would you have to spend worrying and exercising to try and gain those 6 inches? Are you going to ever be able to add a little bit to your stature by fret and worry and concern? and grousing? No. Which of you by worrying could add a cubit to your stature? If you then are not able to do the least, why are you anxious for the rest? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. And I say to you, you go out up in Michigan, over on the west side of Michigan, along Lake Michigan, they have a place called Holland, Michigan. And when you go down the freeway past Holland, Michigan, during the spring of the season, the Tulip Festival in Holland, Michigan. Now, the Tulip Festival in Holland, Michigan isn't a handful or a potful. They're fields of red and pink and vibrant colors, yellow and tall and beautiful, all growing by fields in color, unimaginable, brilliant. And those are the lilies. The next field over's got roses. And the next field over's got azaleas. We came down here. I couldn't ever remember seeing azaleas in all my life, but we came down here and everywhere these azalea bushes and the beauty of the flowers. I got to get me one of them. And we put it in around the house. You know, it didn't do diddly. Wrong sort. Didn't like it. Wouldn't flower. I worried over it. I sweated over it. I watered it, fed it. Nada. Consider the lilies, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I say to you, Solomon in all his glory, all the garments, all the colors, was not arrayed like one of these. If then God so clothes, puts garments, color around the grass, which today is in the field, tomorrow is thrown into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? The word faith has two ideas. One is believe. Pistos means faith. Faith, to believe. The other hand of faith is trust. There's a difference between believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, and thou shalt be saved. Believe that he is Lord, that he is the Son of God. Believe that he is risen from the dead, and then trust him to save you and deliver you from sin. Hang your hopes on him. Trust. Do not seek what you should eat or what you should drink. Don't be anxious in your mind. That idea of being anxious is double-minded. James says, double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Faith, believe, trust. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask. Pray, and faith believing that God will answer your prayers. For all these things the nations of the world seek after. You see the story of getting the farmer, the two boys. Now it's the nations. All these things the nations in the world seek after. More stuff. Material things. Temporal things. The things that we put a dollar amount on. The world wants more of those things. All these things the world seek after, and your Father knows the things that you have need of. Now there, trust in that, believe in that. This is where we get to the heart of the issue. This is where we get to the kernel. The things that we have something to do with, or the things that God has everything to do with. the things that we are entrusted with, that God has given to us, the things that God has blessed us with, the things that, everybody needs the same things: a roof over their head, something to get from one place to another, clothes on your back, food on the table. Do not fear, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Now this is things that are of some value and things that are of kingdom value, eternal value. Where is your heart and your mind and your strength? Do you love things, the world's things, the things that God has created and put there to be used and enjoyed, but not worshipped, not served, not strive at? Or do you have any idea of what it is to be the conduit of God's grace and mercy? Do not fear, my little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell what you have, give alms, provide yourself money. If God has blessed us with anything, and God has blessed us with everything, He should be thanked. If Paul in 2 Corinthians 8, chapter 9, give thanks. Count your blessings and be mindful to give thanks to God who's blessed us. Every good, perfect gift comes from above, and to Him is the glory. Now notice this. Sell what you have, give alms, provide yourselves money bags which do not grow old. My dad left us a little portion of his going away gift to us. And we've put it in something called cryptocurrency. And it's digital. And you get a virtual wallet. Now I've got a wallet and I put cash in it. But then there's this that is on the internet and it's virtual, a virtual wallet. See, this wallet, because I wear it when I'm working, is going to get old and stale, and the leather's going to wear out. Time to wrap it up. But there is a wallet, and it's not the virtual wallet, that won't get stained, it won't get tarnished. There is a wallet in God's pocket, a bag in God's hands, that everything that I put into that gift above, set your affection on things above. Set your heart on things above. Put your treasure in things above. In God's hands. Trust whatever I've trusted, whatever I've committed unto God is safe against that day. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Set your mind on things above, where rust and thieves and all of those things cannot get in. It's safe in the hands of God. Gracious God and Heavenly Father, ask, Father, that you would show yourself strong. We thank you for every good. We thank you for all your blessings. We thank you for everything that comes to us. Help us to hold these things lightly, to hang on to it loosely, to let you lead us, give us intent and direction and where to distribute the things that you blessed us with, that all might know the hand of God. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.